All right, welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 29th day of July 2024. Just to introduce them, Robert Mbui is the Member of Parliament for Kathiani constituency, also the Deputy Minority Leader at the National Assembly. Wanjiru Gikonyo is a transformative governance expert, and Nelson Koech is the Member of Parliament for Belgut constituency and the Chairperson of the Defence, Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committee. We're still waiting for Suleiman Shahbal, who is the Member of Parliament of East African Legislative Assembly, and also from the ODM party, which has contributed 4 nominees to form the broad-based cabinet, as the president calls it. We'll be talking about that later on, but at the front pages of the Standard and the Daily Nation, Gachagua running out of options. It is not in doubt that Deputy President harbours ambitions to succeed President Ruto, and if he thought he was close to his target by endearing himself to Mount Kenya region, then that target has moved quite a distance as the bromance between the president and Raila blossoms. On the front page of the Daily Nation, Ruto turns to usual strategy. President Ruto is back to his usual strategy of touring regions he perceives will accord him a good reception after doling out political rewards in cabinet appointments, a script he has perfected since coming to power in 2022. The political tours are usually disguised as development visits, and of course this week is when Parliament will sit to look into names of those cabinet nominees, and I think both Robert Mbui and Nelson Koech sit in that vetting committee, right? So let's begin with you, Honorable Koech. We haven't heard from you since Wednesday last week, but first let's listen to what the president says about what has just happened over the past few weeks.
Mimi nimesema naunda serikali ama baraza la mawaziri yenye italeta jamii zote za Kenya pamoja. Italete sehemu zote za Kenya pamoja, itatuweka sote pamoja, ndio tuweze kukabiliana kwa pamoja na changamoto za taifa letu la Kenya, tupange maendeleo pamoja. Sisi kama viongozi, kuna wakati wa kuwa mwanasiasa na kuna wakati wa kuwa kiongozi. Wakati wa kuwa kiongozi ni kuamua yale mambo hata kama ni magumu, lakini yanafaidi watu wako.
All right, so that's the president, of course, explaining why he had to get some freedoms outside his political formation. Honorable Koech, talk to us about how this responds to what had been weeks of protest and calls of accountability by especially the younger population.
I think, first of all, looking at what the issue was, there were issues with this issue of shareholding, where people felt like, you know, it's only one section or two sections of this country that were benefiting from cabinet positions. The president then did promise that he was going to form a broad-based government, which has now included a section of members from ODM. I think that is exactly what we want as a country. We want the face of the country. And I like the fact that someone did speak, I think it was Samatandi, Honorable Samatandi, who said that, you know, we as Luo community, or was it Kaluma, that we continue to pay taxes, yet we don't see ourselves in the cabinet. We don't see ourselves in decision-making organ of government. And it was, I think, necessary for the president then to broaden his government, expand the base, so that he gets to understand what happens in every part of this country. I think that is what the president is saying, so that at least you address some of the challenges that the young people of this country have raised, the people of this country have raised, and by going out to form that sort of government, then you'll be addressing one of the many issues that were raised by the young people of this country.
So what is that expansion?
Come again?
What is that expansion?
Expansion is to accommodate as many people as possible in the cabinet, particularly areas where they felt that they were underrepresented, underdeveloped. And if you remember, Sam, what irked many people was this thing of, you know, two communities getting a big share of a cabinet position. In fact, it's on record that a section of our party leadership had gone to the extent of having a section of the representation of society as a shareholding in government. It is.
So if it's about including communities, so which communities have now been included?
If you look at quite a huge number, you see Luo Nyanza, for instance, has felt underrepresented since independence. They have actually actively been in the opposition for way too long. I think it has gotten to a time where they're also saying it is important that we also participate in shaping the policies of this country.
But Honorable Koech, I thought Eliud Owalo comes from that region.
Absolutely, but was that a number sufficient? Number two, the president is a politician. So there are other political issues that were underlying that probably will be now captured and solved by having this side of, opposition in government, having this side of ODM in government, having the guys who have, if you watch yesterday's president discussion in Town Hall, Mombasa, he did express that he offered a hand to everyone who wanted to come and join the government, people who wanted to negotiate with him, people who felt like they should step up and provide solutions other than just criticism, be part of his government. And he said he reached out to those who accepted and had a discussion with them. Some, of course, democratically did not accept to be part of the discussions, so they did not care of being in government. I'm sure Honorable Robert Mbui will be addressing that. But those who stepped up and said, okay, where the country had reached at that moment in time, it was necessary to provide both political solution and listen to the people and what they said in regards to the formation of government going forward.
Political solution. Please tell us what that means, because you're saying
President Ruto is a politician.
Yes.
As you address the issues that arise, particularly that were raised, the first one that was raised by the Gen Z, you must be alive to the fact that he's also a politician. He is a politician because he is elected. So when he is elected, he must make sure that as he addresses that, he also looks at, what does it mean to my political future? Does it mean that if I play this card, will I generally be submitting to political maneuvers that were, you must remember, Sam, that besides what you saw about the Gen Z, there was a lot of politics that were involved. Okay, there was commercial activism that was involved. There were politicians who were involved. The first, and I always mentioned it, the first demonstration that happened on 25th by the young people of this country was probably the only legitimate maandamano that you've ever had with genuine concerns.
You mean 18th of June? Because 25th is when Parliament was breached.
Yeah. 18th of June. The subsequent ones was hijacked by politicians and people whose...
Which politicians?
What
evidence? Politicians.
Is there evidence for this?
At this point...
Or are these just political utterances?
At this point,
there's a DCI, there's an
investigative
NIS.
agencies, if you allow me, I'll give you a chance. At this point, the investigative...
he's the chair of intelligence coming to
say... He must have a report.
At this point, investigative agencies are actually doing investigation. Preliminary investigation is pointing to political figures that might have used that opportunity to hijack a peaceful process, genuine process for political scores. And I can tell you, even as we are talking, so many politicians have been picked to the court state.
So those political figures, which parties do they belong to?
Both.
Which ones?
Both the opposition, civil society.
So some of them could be members of UDA?
And some in government, yes.
And some could be members of ODM?
I wouldn't at this point say, but I'm telling you that it is opposition, civil society, and some within government. So,
Honorable Mbui, why didn't you cooperate to work with the president?
Some, first and foremost, let us agree that we have to respect our constitution. And our constitution as it is framed, because we are a democratic country, once we finish with our elections, there are those that are elected and maybe win the presidency, and they have to be given the opportunity for 5 years to run the country. And those of us who don't manage, then we will spend our time putting them, on notice that we expect services for the citizens. So basically, we all have a role to play. And you remember even when the NADCO report was being coined, there was an issue of fidelity to political parties. Basically, we believe that as Azimio, we have a responsibility to the country. We are part of the minority, and we must keep the balance the government in check. So basically, that is the reason why I feel it would be betrayal of the highest order for us as members of Azimio to again become part of government. Then who then checks the excesses that the government is expected or may be involved in? So I think for us going into government would have been unfair, would have been wrong. You remember after the last election, some members of ODM tried to cross to in fact, they ended up in State House and they took a photo, about 10 members. These members have been punished severely by their party, the ODM party. They've written letters, some of them were even fined, money. I think like the women rep of Nairobi, I thought they were supposed to pay $1 million. So there's been a lot of punishment because there was a belief that they were not showing fidelity to the party that brought them to the house. So basically, I think for us to have crossed, that would be unfair. But then again, I think it's important to look at the myths and the facts, because I've listened to Koech here, and he's talking about the issue of regional balancing and all. If you look at the new composition, I mean, Central Kenya has kind of gotten the same number, which we feel was fairly high, of CSs. What we've done in Coast, for example, we've just exchanged the Honorable Aisha Jumwa with the Honorable Joho. We've exchanged John Badi with Eliud Owalo. Does that then mean that now that's new face of Kenya? Is John Badi now the face of Luo Nyanza? And Eliud Owalo was not representing Luo Nyanza. I mean, let's be honest. When we have these conversations, we need to be candid. What the president has done, unfortunately, is gone against what the youth told him. Because they told him, let's have people that can serve this country, and let's not have political deals. Let's not have what we call friends and sycophancy. Let's have people that can serve the country. You want to tell me, out of all the Kenyans, that over 50 million Kenyans, when William Samoei Ruto was looking for a new cabinet, he could only pick 4 members of the leadership of ODM and tell us it was because of those that Kenya will heal? I want to understand how 4 CSs from ODM will make Kenya a better country. I want to understand. I want to understand how they will make, the problems of Kenya go away. And yet we were on the same side, strongly criticizing the excesses and the weaknesses of the Kenya Kwanza regime. I want to understand how suddenly they have understood how the bottom-up economic transformation program is going to work for Kenyans. Because when you go to government, it means then you are going to implement the manifesto of UDA. I want to understand how our members of Azimio are going to be able to implement that manifesto. Because throughout we have actually been critical of the processes and the systems that they've put in place. So for me, I think the whole thing is a mess. And Kenyans
was there any direct approach to your party to have those discussions?
Direct approach to our party, no. To have discussions on joining government, no. But, of course, to have a conversation, yes. And that is in public domain. We didn't know that the conversation was about sharing power. We thought the conversation was about healing the country and dealing with the ills and the evils that have been, messing up our country for the longest time. We thought that was a conversation. And that's why we're saying let's have a national convention. Let's have all players come on the table. Let us discuss what is it that ails Kenya. How can we be able to provide solutions to the problems ailing Kenya? But after a discussion with 2, 3, 4 people, President feels that the dialogue is over and it's done.
But Mbui, one of the cabinet nominees is your boss in the house, your leader of minority that you deputize Opiyo Wandayi. You didn't know that he was headed to the government? I
didn't know. In fact, the time when the media had put his photo in the newspapers, I followed up and I was told no. He was not boarding. So when the point at which he boarded, I don't know. But that's why I'm up to now. In fact, the whole of last week, I was very uncomfortable. I didn't even know what to go and say in the floor of the house because my immediate, boss was a nominee in the Kenya Kwanza regime that we had agreed that we'll be holding to account. So I thought that he left me in a very awkward position. You can imagine, Sam, if your immediate boss has gone and you have a plan, you have a strategy. We are holding these people to account. We'll make sure that anything they do that is excessive, we shall call them to order. And then suddenly you find the boss is not there, he's on the other side, sitting that side facing you. How do you operate? So it was a very, very difficult week for me. Okay. I hope that I'll get the courage and the strength to now pursue this position without because I'm just wondering, Every time I look at any one of our members, I look at them with suspicion.
You don't know who's headed where?
I don't know who's going to go next.
Okay, all right. I hear you, Honorable Mbui. Wanjiru, what do you make of this, especially when it comes to matters of transparency? Because, yes, the president said that he's going to approach different sectors of the country, including political formations, to form a broad-based government. But then now you see that what you'd call the opposition formation, that is Azimio, members in there are saying that they were not consulted. Raila Odinga has come out and said that the members of ODM that are joining government are joining individually. There's no working formula between UDA and ODM in form of a coalition, which is emphasized by the president. But what does it tell us about resolving the crisis that was, even looking at the solutions versus what the problem was?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I like the question. And let's remember, the reason we are here is not because of a lack of political representation, political party representation in government. It is because of the failure in terms of the constitutional values of leadership, integrity, trustworthiness, confidence of the public. The reason the Gen Zs went to the street, and it's unfortunate that the chair of the Security and Defense Committee can actually try and rubbish away the reality that Kenyans are very unhappy. There are a majority of Kenyans across tribal lines, unlike this government that's struggling with tribal issues, across socioeconomic class, unlike our political class that has been trying to divide the middle class and the lower class and to say they will look after this if they squeeze the other side. Across all those lines, young people came out onto the streets. And if you had gone onto the streets, you would have known. I was on the streets actually 2 Tuesdays consecutively. I then missed because, of course, the violence by the state, contrary to the principles of the Constitution. So actually, Koech here, the first statement you should make is to apologize to the families of the 60 young people who are executed by the police security forces, and we've seen even on videos recorded young people running away from the police. There is a report that was published, the Maraga report, that sits, I believe, on your table. I wonder if there's been any effort to implement it. The actual report remains confidential. I'm not sure if it's been released. I'm not sure if there's a stakeholder discussion about the real issues bedeviling our security sector, which is there's a lot of corruption. In fact, the recommendation was there needs to be a new vetting, because the police is so rotten and so compromised. So this is why the Gen Z were on the street, because our leadership lacks integrity. They were protesting against the finance bill. These are economic policies that are hurting Kenyans, contrary to the election promises. So they came out because William Ruto lied. He campaigned on bottom-up economic policies, got into government, and started privatizing everything without accountability, without parliamentary scrutiny. He said no more debt.
Is it fair to say the president lied?
Well, that is an understatement, because the president and his, his supporters, like the present statement, specialize in changing the narrative. They are now trying to change the narrative from a lack of leadership accountability, which is an issue actually that's bigger than this government, because our country has a problem in terms of political accountability. And this has become a widespread problem. People sell their votes. They vote in leaders who are corrupt, who are murderers, who are rapists. And then once they voted in these people who are not worthy to head even the smallest kiosk and put them in the highest office, they then complain about them. So this is the issue that Gen Z brought forward. And I want to say, in 2015, there was a study that looked at Gen Z's attitudes to the issue of accountability. And the sentiments then by the young people were, it's okay to be corrupt as long as you don't get caught. There was a similar study last year that found the young people are very unhappy about corruption, and they don't support corruption. So when they came out onto the street, actually they were saying, and that's why they were saying, cut MP salaries to 250,000, slash the CDF. remove all those political appointees who don't meet the Chapter 6 standard. So what William Ruto was asked to do was to clean out the house of corrupt leaders. But what did he do? He appointed, and one of the he recycled, number one. So that, and it's been challenged in court because he may have violated the constitution yet again, bringing dishonor to the office instead of bringing honor to the office. One of the appointments, if you look at Kipchumba Murkomen, it is a slap in Gen Z's face that he was appointed to sports and youth on the eve of a protest about corruption in the ministry that he's heading, where they have brought in fact, it's headline here, red flags on Adani JKIA deal. So on the eve of that protest, where more youth were shot, by the way, by the police, he's then appointed to a docket. So no, William Ruto had. His minions and supporters also had. But they fear this reality, because if William Ruto was to say anybody who has a political scandal, who has ever been charged, cannot sit in cabinet, it means even he has to go. So the call of William Ruto must go is because he betrayed his election promises. He has violated the constitution, including, by your own admission, appointing people on ethnic grounds. That is contrary to Chapter 6. It's contrary to the principles of public service. So the president is a serial violator of the constitution. And that is why Gen Z said he must step aside and allow the country to deal with its fundamental issue of lack of political accountability. But do you think, when he says that initially there was a feeling that two regions were dominating cabinet positions, and now stretching it to have at least now we have two from Nyanza. Okay, three, if you had to include Ogamba. Does it make a case there? No, it's a distraction. Number one, how many of the appointees have cases of corruption, of abuse of office that were proffered against them that have been appointed to the cabinet? Number two, what is the track record they have in their work in terms of expertise? Number three, are they politicians? Gen Z very clearly said they don't want any political appointees. They don't want politicians in cabinet. William Ruto has done that. Our constitution had sought to separate the political arm from the executive arm so that you can have proper oversight. Now politicians sit in parliament waiting and hoping they'll be appointed. So actually, and I agree with what Mbui has said, it is a mess. And this actually makes it messier. Who is it that benefits from this political mess is the question we have to ask. Because the Gen Z were trying to clarify. And now what KK are trying to do is to make things very murky. The question is, who benefits when things are murky, when there is no accountability, when there is rogue officers in plain clothes shooting protesters who are peaceful, when lies are being proffered by the chair of defense that the genuine citizen anger is politically instigated. Our politicians cannot imagine that citizens, young people to the point, can mobilize themselves out onto the street. They can't imagine. And that is indeed what happened. And all who've paid for violence should have been brought to book, because we have security agents that are presumed to work. So why is this report
I hear you, Wanjiru. Let's also listen to the president, because he's been at the coast for the past 3 or so days. Here is part of what he said in Kwale.
Shirikiane kwa pamoja kutoka jamii zote, kutoka pembe zote za Kenya. Tuungane ndio tuweze kukabiliana na changamoto za Kenya na tupange maendeleo pamoja. Ndio sababu nimesema nimeweka baraza la mawaziri ya kujumuisha Wakenya kutoka sehemu zote za Kenya. Ndio tuweze kushirikiana, tuweze kuhakikisha ya kwamba Kenya inapiga hatua ya kwenda mbele. We will all become winners. Ndio nimesema we are forming a cabinet of win-win, where everybody becomes a winner. And I want to say that as we form this administration, I am persuaded beyond doubt that we are going to change our country. We are going to unlock the potential of Kenya being that great country we have always wanted it to be.
Honorable Koech, we've heard that before. in fact, in more eloquent terms than that, that you're going to change this country. He says that this is a cabinet for everybody, a win-win situation. But he's also saying that he was looking towards a political solution, political survival. So what's bigger?
First, let me, listening to Wanjiru Gikonyo, I'll call her Shiro for the purpose of this debate. You will think she just come to Kenya today. First of all, I would really like, when you're looking at William Ruto's cabinet, we compare with the other cabinets. Look at Uhuru Kenyatta's cabinet. Look at Mwai Kibaki's cabinet. Let's not just be boxed by this 2-year William Ruto's administration and become extremely irritated by the kind of cabinet he has. I mean, it is our collective responsibility to make sure that we oversight the government. Forget about even legislature alone. Even as citizens of this country, it is a right. But as we do that, we look at our past. We live in a country. People express themselves through their voters. We have said everyone who has an issue with this government should step forward and let us have a discussion. There are people who are saying, no, we do not want to be part of it. Like Honorable Robert Mbuya said, Wiper decided no, they did not want to be part of it. There is a team that has stepped forward and said, we are looking at the interests of this country because this is our country. If we sink our country today, we will not even have anyone to oversight in the first place. So let us come to the table and talk. And that is exactly what the president is saying. To say broad-based government, Sam, and in all fairness, number one, I think the president has done one of the best decisions, that he has nothing to hide. That his biggest critic in the minority leader today is going to oversight energy. That their biggest...
Sorry, to oversight energy, or
to be in the cabinet as a minister of energy. Sorry, my apologies. His biggest critic today is going to look at the finances of this country in the name of John Mbadi. It means that it is becoming as open as possible, so that all the issues that have been criticizing, they have an opportunity now to really look at them from a different perspective, from a different angle. Because unless then we have another mechanism of raising revenue in this country that probably we do not understand, then these people will address it to the country and say, guys, listen, this is what I was pointing out. This is where the theft is, and this is how we will fix it. These are the things that we will want to be brought forward. So by picking people from ODM, and you must remember...
So you believe what Professor Njuguna Ndung'u was not able to achieve, John Mbadi...
I'm not saying that. I'm saying you must remember that in terms of, in saying representation, Raila Odinga and Azimio had 49% confidence during the last general election. That means that that huge constituency of people that were left out were feeling uncomfortable being out and not being part of the decision making. So is it Wanjiru, if you allowed me to speak, I will appreciate it.
Substantiate.
Okay, Wanjiru, I'll allow you
if you allow me to speak, I'll allow you to speak. Let's just not be, let's be civil a bit. To say this, okay? That 49%. And no one should tell you that they are not represented. We are living in a democracy. Gen Z is also...
Sorry, you're saying that 49% of those that voted in 2022 election voted for
Azimio and Raila Odinga.
And they were feeling left out.
They were, I'm saying that is a huge percentage.
Link that to Gen Z.
That is a huge percentage to be left out. Gen Zs also are represented by political formations.
So they were left out, and now?
And now that having them on the table, having a section of that team on the table, having a section of ODM on the table, is somehow having them accommodated, the 49% that were left out, being accommodated in this government. You must remember.
You believe that?
I believe that because we share almost a common manifesto. All these political parties. I have looked at the manifesto, for instance, over Azimio. They had housing. Okay, they had universal health care. So where we have common manifesto, we can now discuss from that point and say, fine.
Why did you have an election in 2022, Honorable Koech?
We had an election, of course, but we are being confronted by a different challenge. The president was trying to form his own government, and he had his government. But the people are saying now, no, listen, we want more people on the table. You must remember, and it should not be lost to us, Sam, that the protest and the contest by the young people was nothing to do with the cabinet. So it was the finance bill 2024-2025. That was the issue.
It is your take, So how does having John Mbadi, Hassan Joho,
that's what I'm saying.
Paranya,
there have been series and subsequent events that have happened since the first demonstration. I have told you the contest, the biggest issue that the young people of this country had was the Finance Bill 2024-2025, which was dropped. But the president did even something extremely drastic, and I'm sure he's still going to formulate his government. He dismissed his cabinet.
That's what I'm asking you, because you've said that the bigger challenge that Kenyans and the young people are having was the Finance Bill 2024.
Yes.
How does Joho, or Paranya, Mbadi, or Pio resolve that?
I have said that was a representation of the 49%. ODM and Azimio had about 49% in last general election. There are people who felt uncomfortable. There are people who felt they were so close to government, yet they were not allowed the opportunity to be in government. What the president is saying that in forming broad-based government is accommodating all other political players for the sake of the country.
Okay.
It is not in any way, I mean, having John Mbadi and having Wandai might solve the solution, but I think it is a representation.
All right. Honorable Kwachu, we'll come back to that. I want us to take a look at the feedback that has come to us so far. Citizen TV, Kenya, Samgi took the hashtag to use the Citizen Daybreak on X. This is Engineer Lazaro. The president is free to appoint experts from many political organizations, so long as they are Kenyans and capable to deliver. Broad-based government helped Kibaki regime to rescue nation from anarchy. Bob Otieno, the so-called broad-based agenda is political conmanship, especially from the ODM party, who took advantage of Gen Z protests to join government through the window, leaving other coalition members in Azimio in darkness. So those are some of the feedback that we have received so far. We'll be taking more in the next few minutes. But first, we take a short break here. On Daybreak, we're talking about what a broad-based agenda will look like. This week, Parliament will be vetting the 20 nominees, but also looking ahead on what happens to Parliament at a time that the minority party has lost its leader. Robert Mbui says he had no idea that his boss was moving. We'll talk about that after the break. Stay tuned.